There are shows that get canceled, there are shows that quietly get forgotten, and then there's the one where the cast got back together 22 years later, started pulling the whole thing apart on tape, and worked out that one of them wasn't coming. Boy Meets World ran 7 seasons on ABC, 158 episodes, September 1993 to May 2000. The pilot pulled 16.5 million viewers on a Friday night. The next week it went up to 19.2. When Season 3 opened in September 1995, close to 20 million people watched Cory Matthews walk back into Mr. Feeney's classroom. It was never a top 10 show, it never had to be. It was the show your whole school watched and then argued about on Monday morning. But there's another Topanga you've never seen. She lasted exactly 1 day. There's a creator the cast now describes in language nobody's putting on the Disney Plus page. There's a co-star who came on the podcast in 2025 and got hit with a 4-word question that turned the episode into a fight. And there's Ben Savage, Cory himself, who stopped answering his TV brother's calls, blocked his number, and has never once said why. This is the rise, the slow fall, and the very strange second life of Boy Meets World. Before we start, give this video a like if you watched Boy Meets World back in the day, and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. Let's go all the way back to 1993. Friday nights belonged to ABC. TGIF was the block, and if you were a kid in America, you didn't plan anything else. Full House, Family Matters, Step by Step, 2 hours of family sitcoms, and the network wanted one more. They had a piece already sitting on the shelf. Ben Savage was under a holding contract at ABC. He was 13, he was good, and he happened to be the younger brother of Fred Savage, who at that point was about as famous as a kid actor could get. So Michael Jacobs, a producer with a long list of network credits behind him, built a show around the kid the network already had under contract. That's the origin. Not a burning creative vision, a contract that needed using. The show they built was small on purpose: a 6th grader, his best friend, his family, and the teacher who lived next door. And that teacher nearly walked before the first episode aired. William Daniels sat through the pilot, table read, and it went so badly he quit. By Jacobs' own account, ABC had thrown out the script he'd originally handed in, so he went away and rewrote the thing in about 12 hours to get Daniels back. Think about that for a second. No Feeney. The most quoted character in the show almost didn't make it out of a single bad afternoon. So they had Cory, they had Feeney, and then they had a casting problem that they solved in the ugliest way possible, and it took 30 years for anyone to talk about it. Her name is Bonnie Morgan. She was 12. She auditioned for Topanga 3 separate times, and each time the script came back slightly different, shaped a little more around the things she'd talked about in the room. Her parents were hippies, her mother grew kombucha mushrooms in the kitchen, her parents got married in Topanga Canyon. The part was hers, and it felt like it had been written for her because in a small way it had. She got it. And then she showed up for her first day, and every adult on that set was short with her. She said the table read was fun, and then the minute she was on her own, it turned into the strangest day of her life. Ben Savage was being a 13-year-old pulling faces to make her break. She had a line she couldn't land. The director told her to get it together, and the next morning she wasn't there. They told her she couldn't take direction. What her agent got told was different, and it's the version she believes. The director didn't think she was pretty enough. She'd been caught in a power struggle between Jacobs, who wanted her, and the director, who didn't, and she was 12 years old. She never spoke about it publicly, not once, for 30 years. And I'll tell you exactly where she finally did and who she was sitting across from when she did it, because that's a story on its own. The girl they hired instead had auditioned and hadn't even got a call back. The director brought her back in as a favor. She got the phone call on a Friday night and she was on set on the Monday. 12 years old, no rehearsal, walking into a job the last girl had just been fired from. That was Danielle Fishel, and her first day was worse than you'd guess. At the end of that first day of rehearsal, the cast sat down for notes with Michael Jacobs. Fishel spoke fast. She'd spent the whole day trying to slow down. Jacobs opened the session by telling her, in front of the entire cast, the writers, the producers, and the crew, that he'd be saving all her notes for the end because if he made everyone sit through them, nobody would be going home tonight. Then he went through every line she'd said and told her what was wrong with it. She was 12. She's described her eyes welling up in front of a room of adults she'd known for about 9 hours. And she said that from that point on, her job wasn't getting the performance right. It was keeping Michael Jacobs happy. That's the distinction, and she's the one who drew it. 2 decades later, she still knew exactly which one she'd been doing. And here's the part that makes it complicated. It worked. The show got good. Cory and Topanga became the thing everybody watched for. The friendship with Sean became the emotional spine, and by 1995, the show was pulling 20 million people on a Friday night. Some of the best half hours that block ever produced came out of that room. Underneath it, the maths wasn't even. Fishel was being paid less than the boys. Her father and her agent eventually had her boycott a table read over it. She later switched to a new agent, Judy Savage, who doubled her salary between seasons 4 and 5. Doubled. Which tells you what the first number was, and Fishel has said that even after all that, across 7 seasons, she never once caught up to what her male co-stars were making. And I want to flag something now, because it matters later. The 3 of them were kids on that set. Fishel was 12, Ryder Strong was in his early teens, Will Friedle was barely out of them. Every one of the stories I've just told you, they told themselves. Nobody dug these up. That's the whole point of what comes next. The fall was boring, which is usually how it goes. The characters got older, so the show moved from 8:30 to 9:30. Fine. Except the entire TGIF block was sinking underneath it. By 1998, the audience for the whole night was draining away, and after season 6, ABC renewed exactly 2 shows off that block, Boy Meets World and Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Everything else went, you can watch it in the rankings. Season 1, the show finished 37th for the year, Season 2, 36th, then 48th, then 51st, then 55th, 58th, and in that final year, 73rd. Then ABC did the thing that killed it, and it had nothing to do with the show. They shut TGIF down, the whole block. Sabrina got picked up by another network and kept going for 4 more years. Boy Meets World didn't have anywhere to go, so it was canceled outright. May 5th, 2000. Feeney says class dismissed, and that's it. 14 years later, Disney brought it back as Girl Meets World with Cory and Topanga as parents. 3 seasons, ended in 2017, and that should have been the end of the story. Then, in June 2022, 3 of them started a podcast. Pod Meets World launched on June 26, 2022. Fishel, Strong, and Friedle rewatching every episode in order, with the crew and the guest stars coming on to fill in what happened around the camera. It was supposed to be nostalgic. It went somewhere else almost immediately. They talked about the pay gap. They talked about being teenagers on a family sitcom, and about how badly the industry needed intimacy coordinators 20 years before it got them. Friedle talked about being directed to look more as a kid. Fishel talked about grown men on that set and about the fact that at the time the attention felt like validation, which is the kind of sentence you don't unhear. And they brought Bonnie Morgan on. 30 years after she got fired, the woman who replaced her sat in a room and asked her to tell the story. Morgan told it. Then she told Fishel that yes, for a long time she'd thought of it as something that got taken from her, but Fishel hadn't been in a corner conspiring. The seat was open, and Fishel got ushered into it. That's the loop closed, and I don't think there's another rewatch podcast in the world that would have done it. They also had to deal with Trina McGee. In January 2020, she'd tweeted about what it was like being the only Black series regular on that show, called Aunt Jemima on set during hair and makeup, called a bitter bitch, greeted like a stranger after roughly 60 episodes. No hairdresser assigned to her, so she sat up the night before doing her own micro braids to go on national television. It was Friedle who'd used the slur. He apologized more than once, including in a 3-page letter. Fishel publicly apologized too for being cold to McGee on the Girl Meets World set. McGee came on the podcast in September 2022, and they worked through it on tape. In 2024, Friedle and Strong used the show to address something far heavier, letters they had written years earlier in support of Brian Peck, a dialogue coach who worked on Boy Meets World and was convicted in 2004 of sexually. They spent an episode saying they'd got it catastrophically wrong. I'm not going to build entertainment on top of that because it isn't my story or theirs to sell. But it tells you what this podcast had turned into. Not all of it landed. In February 2025, they had Maitland Ward on, who played Rachel in the last 2 seasons. A few minutes in, Fishel asked her on mic, "Do you hate us?" 4 words. The episode never recovered. Ward said no, but that she thought Fishel hated her because Fishel wouldn't speak to her on the Girl Meets World set. It got sharp. Ward accused Fishel of coming at her for ratings. Afterwards, she told Fox News Digital she'd felt bullied and that the whole thing had been orchestrated and that nobody had warned her. By the end of 2025, the podcast had passed 50 million downloads. It became a national tour. It became a book. It became a documentary that premiered at Tribeca on June 6, 2026. And through every single episode of it, there is a chair nobody sits in. Ben Savage was in the conversation to co-host this thing from the start. Ryder Strong had the idea back in 2018, and Savage was part of the discussions. He passed. His words, "I just don't think it's for me." Fishel said publicly they respected it, the door was open, come on anytime. That's the polite version. Here's what actually happened. Around April 2020, Ben Savage stopped answering. Not a fight, not a falling out, he just stopped. Then he unfollowed the three of them on Instagram and he blocked their phone numbers. All of that happened more than 2 years before the podcast existed. The podcast didn't cause this. The podcast is just the thing that made it impossible to hide. Fishel's version is blunt. He ghosted us. And it landed hard on her specifically because Savage had been there for her in 2019 when she delivered her son a month early, checking in on her constantly. Months later, nothing. In Doc Meets World, Friedle finally showed the camera the thing he'd been carrying, his text thread with Ben Savage. Years of messages going one direction, one of them reads, "Just FaceTimed you. I'm gonna call you every day until you pick up or tell me to stop." There's a moment where Strong sends something and watches it go through blue instead of green, which on an iPhone means he'd been unblocked. 6 years of silence and a color on a screen was the closest thing to an answer anybody got. Savage never replied. Friedle, on the podcast in February 2025, he won't speak to us. And then plainly, that Ben is one of the most important people he's ever met, and he can't stand it. In June 2026, promoting the documentary, he was still saying the same thing. "I haven't given up on my friend." Nobody knows why, not the cast, not the crew, not the fans, not the people who made an 84-minute film about it. Savage has said nothing. He ran for Congress in 2023, and Strong has mentioned they never agreed on much politically growing up, but nobody has connected those dots on the record, and I'm not going to do it for them. Reviewers who watched the documentary at Tribeca kept landing on the same note. 3 of the 4 are on screen, and the hole where the 4th one should be is the loudest thing in the film. They made a documentary about a friendship, and the person it's really about didn't turn up. Danielle Fishel hosts the podcast, directs television, and has been married to Jensen Karp since 2018. In August 2024, she used the show to tell listeners she'd been diagnosed with DCIS and early-stage breast cancer. Her words, "I'm gonna be fine." Writer Strong made Cabin Fever in 2002 with Eli Roth, which is a genuinely great horror film, and you should watch it after you've watched this entire video twice. He voiced Brick Flag in Kim Possible. He directs now. Married since 2013, Will Friedle became one of the busiest voice actors in the business. Batman Beyond, Kim Possible. He's got a second podcast going with Sabrina Bryan. He's also the one who wrote the 3-page apology letter and the one still sending the text, which is a lot to hold at once. Trina McGee is back on the convention circuit, back on good terms with Fishel, and she came on the podcast and said her piece. Maitland Ward went into adult film and is the only main cast member who never came back for Girl Meets World. William Daniels turned 96 in 2023 and is still going. In October 2025, several of them reunited on Dancing with the Stars to pay tribute to him. And Ben Savage went to Stanford, got a political science degree, ran for Congress in 2023, married Tessa Angermeyer, and had his first child in November 2025. He's fine, he's just gone. Bonnie Morgan, by the way, went on to play Samara in The Ring. The girl they fired for not being pretty enough spent a career being terrifying on purpose, and she got the last word on national radio 30 years later. The show ended with Feeney saying, "Class dismissed." 26 years on, 3 of his students are still in the room, still going through it, still saving a seat. And the boy the whole thing was built around, the one ABC already had under contract before there was a script, is the only one who left and didn't say goodbye. If you enjoyed this deep dive, give the video a like and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. Thanks for watching.